Here we go.
There you go. Right, guys, enjoy.
Cool. We'll maybe see you later, Mike. Yeah, have a good night.
Cheers, Mike.
Okay, well, good evening all. And thank you very much to Stuart for coming along to our Blether tonight. Unfortunately, guys, you're left with just me. Mike's been double booked, so I'm a little bit annoyed because obviously Stuart's one of our all-time favourites, and he's kindly along tonight just for the usual Thursday Blether. And I'm no doubt that people will want to know about Stewart, about Glendronach, about Benriach, about Glenglasser, and just about stuff that we want to talk about. So feel free to pop in your comments, your questions, and we'll do what we can and answer some of those. So yeah, hello Stewart. Thank you very much for coming on.
Yeah,
all right tonight.
Absolutely brilliant. What a cracking bit of weather we're having up here in the north. I don't know if you're getting it over as far as you, but it's been great in Elgin. So we've been enjoying a bit of sun.
It was not bad for a bit. It was quite an odd evening because we took the dog out for a walk must have been about 3 o'clock, and it was freezing cold in the house. So I shut the windows because it was really, really cold. Put a jumper on, but off out with the dog. By the time we came back, the sun was out. It was absolutely roasting. The jumper had to come off. All the windows were opened again. So it's been one of those days where it's been a bit up and down because we poured a gin to go out and sit in the sunny garden. But by that stage, the sun had gone. It was really cold again, so back inside we came. But hey, that's Scotland, isn't it?
Even more exciting, I nipped out and cut my grass after my kind of office hours to be out with the lawnmower and then back in now. So that's me done that tour.
It gets too exciting. So there we go, folks. Stuart doesn't get to travel the world all the time. He has to cut the grass as well. So yeah, so what's it been like then? How's it been being kind of stuck at home? And we were talking just off air just before we come on that Poland might have been a destination you'd have been off to just now.
Yeah, one of my favourite festivals ever. Actually, a beautiful kind of almost open air music festival style. Absolutely amazing. But do you know what? To be honest, what is it now? Is it a year and a half? It must be. I've been very lucky because not only with the kind of online work, we've actually been again thinking about even launching Benriach there back last September, which I can't believe is a year ago now. That was a great spell of work, even internally as well as externally and trade. So that really kept me busy. It really did. So I was kind of didn't have a moment to think there, and it worked extremely well. And actually, to launch something online, which nobody's ever done before, the success of it was fantastic. The people we covered and the places we got to, it did work very well. And other than that, again, I was saying earlier on, it was Australia. Like I got pulled out to at the start of COVID. I was at Christchurch Whisky Festival there, and had gone up to Sydney, and had planned to then move up to Perth. I've never been to Perth before, so the day before I was supposed to go to Perth, I got a phone call from my colleague Douglas Cook. It was 4 a.m. in the morning, and I'd just done a bar crawl with the team out there. He said, "You need to get back ASAP." So that was me straight to the phone. I was on a flight the next day, stopped over in Dubai. But it was a funny wee flight. There was myself, Charles McLean, funnily enough, was on it. Alex, Bruce. So it was a bit of a whiskey flight, hauling.
Everybody, almost like a sort of whiskey refugees been sent home. Like,
yeah. But God, that feels like years ago now. But yeah,
I know, such a long time ago. So yeah, we've got a few people sort of joining in. So Andrew, good evening, Andrew. Duncan's got the kids off to bed. He's always in bed duty, Duncan Mateer. So off of the bedtime stories. I'm sure they maybe don't want to hear us, but it might put them to sleep. I don't know. So yeah, I mean, I guess you mentioned the whole online thing. I think it's been for me, being new in the industry. I mean, I'd literally just joined the shop. I think one of the last times you came and did a tasting in the shop. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to stay that night, and I met you for the first time. And I just started. That must have been just towards the end of 2019. But from my point of view, I've found the online stuff's been fantastic in getting access to people like yourself and being able to have conversations with people that might have been really hard because everybody wants a piece of you when you're at a festival, whereas a bit more of a captive audience online, and you're able to get your kind of question in and that kind of thing. So I've actually found it kind of quite a positive approach. And as you say, launching new products, the audience that's actually come along has been very receptive.
Yeah, definitely. I think at the very start, I think everybody was banting around the kind of term, online fatigue, and you might have seen some online fatigue, but places like yourself who do it well haven't, I don't think, seen that fatigue. There's always a thirst for the the guys out there wanting to have a wee listen or a wee dram through the evening. So I think we've been lucky that I've not seen the online fatigue set in as people were maybe predicting.
I think it was maybe more a bit of fatigue for maybe some of the smaller industries that had kind of gone through the gamut of they've spoken to the manager, they've spoken to the blender, they've spoken to. So what do you do then? Did you go back to start and do the whole thing again? Whereas a shop like us, we can continue to go to different distillery, different blender, brand ambassador, author, writer, whiskey fan, blogger,
And it's the same as myself. I've got the 3 distilleries. So actually it's been a natural progression where, funnily enough, it was Benriach had led the way, obviously with the relaunch of the brand there. And then the next one, the Glendronach. And then actually even just now, we're riding a wave of Glenglassaugh. So all I need to do is change my T-shirt, change my dram sets up there, change the picture on the TV, and I've got 3
Just turn the camera into a different part of the room. It's a bit like, what's that thing Jules Holland does? He just goes to a different stage.
I did that at the very start, but my sitting room was just taking over so much, I thought, no. But that was what I did at the start.
Nowhere to watch the TV. Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, I guess great point to actually start. And one of the things we do is we speak about the dram that we've poured, and we ask the guys that are watching what they're drinking tonight. So, what have you were saying earlier on? You were mulling over your choice of what you were going to have tonight. What did you go for?
And I pulled up 5 or 6 or 7 or 8. But you know what? I thought,
well, the night's young. And
it's no, this is actually a real blast from the past.
Oh wow!
1976. Now, I know you guys also do a lovely port fan group. It's a peated port pipe, 1976. Wow. And it was one of the first batches of really finished work we did at Benriach. So it's gone back to 2006, I believe we bottled this one. 2007, actually, I think it is. August 2007. I chose it because I remember watching this cask as it grew through the warehouse and not only watching it progress, when it did progress, putting it out in the market and seeing the response to it, and I managed to get a bottle of it. Not got much left, but I'm definitely going to be dram of it. So that for me reminds me of that first years at Benriach when we started, playing actually with the warehouses and being brave enough to put something like a beautiful 1976 into a port cask and just see what happens. So that for me tells a lot about Benriach's initial start up back in the day.
You've definitely hit a high spot there with Glass Envy. So I'm on the relatively new boy here with the 12. I was hoping to actually pick up the Smoky 12, but there wasn't a wee drop of that available for me to get, so I thought I'd just go with the 12. I'm going to work my way through the distilleries tonight as well. So yeah, I mean, they've been talking about Benriach. I guess that's a good enough place to start in terms of working in your current job, because Benriach was where you started, wasn't it? And I remember, I can't remember if it was yourself told me or I read something about you even spending sort of sleeping in the distillery while they were working, getting the place going again.
Well, that's the thing. Again, there is a connection back to Tobermory there. So starting off in Tobermory Distillery as a stillman, and small island. We didn't have an engineer. We just got the place running. We kept the place running ourselves. So I was always used to stripping down pumps, get building anything, just keeping a distillery going. Boilers I was in the back of all the time, any valves at all. And so that's how I kept myself busy in Tobermory. And then Billy Walker, who was production director with Burns Stewart, when he left Burns Stewart, he was away, I think it was 99, he left Burns Stewart. He kind of disappeared off the landscape and was doing some vatted malt bulk work. And then when he had the opportunity to buy Benriach, it was Alan McConaughey, the distillery manager now, who was also the distillery manager of Tobermory. He asked to go and restart it. And knowing that the place had been shut for 2 years and, not knowing MD up in the area, Alan said to me, well, how do you fancy coming along? So basically 2 weeks, I had packed my bag of books, bag of clothes, a wee Nissan Almira, up the road. Didn't have a place to stay. And I stayed at B&B the first night, and it was April 2004, and beautiful big Malton's building there, sleeping bag in the back of the car. Canny Scotsman. I'm going to get
absolutely
50 quid a night for a B&B until I get a flat. That was it. Just pitched up in the Maltons for that initial period. And the thing was, I was there 24/7 anyway. The place needed totally kind of stripping down, painting out, cleaning down. So it was just wake up in the morning, do the stuff, go to sleep at night, and get crawled on by spiders and wake up again.
I'm sure you're maybe not the first person that fell asleep on a malting floor, but somewhere along the line. So yeah, I mean, so what was it that got you into the whiskey industry? I mean, we had a sort of brief conversation on email about the different direction that yourself and Gordon went, and having kind of grown up on a lovely, beautiful remote island, spending a huge amount of time in the wilds, you can kind of totally understand Gordon's direction heading off with the photography. What was it that pulled you into the kind of whiskey industry?
I didn't realise until I'd looked back and I did this presentation for work about, when you introduced yourself to new team members, this profile. But actually, when I did that, I only realised then that whiskey has surrounded me from when I was born. I don't know if anybody can see this lovely screen behind me here.
Yes, and there's some great.
Probably 1974. No, maybe 75. Goodness, I'm sure you guys might post some pictures of this later, but honest to goodness, I was born in Dumbarton, and Dumbarton, as anybody knows, is a big whiskey town today, but a monstrous whiskey town back in the 70s. Back Chevis Regal are still there today. It was home of Allied. The big red brick distillery itself sat right in the centre of the town, and my father's family had a garage just close by to that. So even a lot of my uncles, well not uncles, but my dad's best friends were engineers in distilleries, and it was always there. The smell was always there. Yeah. I remember even going out to bowling, for example, in the old Dunnage warehousing, which was almost the alarms were geese, and getting bitten by the geese that were in the fenced in around the Dunnage warehouse. Geese, yeah. And even I'm going to keep going on here, but even my grandparents on my mother's side, they were farmers. And my Uncle John, he had a haulage company. So he would haul draft. So he would haul draft out of Rocky, out of Dumbarton as well, out of Glengoyne. And I remember getting a clip round the ear at the farm for playing in the draft pit, stinking of sour draft. Yeah. So even now, if I go by a distillery and I smell a draft, that's where it takes me right back to the farm, So that's gone back a fair bit. But the first point, I suppose, was working in Tobermory Distillery. Slightly before that.
Was that a job that you actively applied for, or was it something you just kind of fell into, or?
It was it was one of these lucky chance events. It's just the corners you turn, the people the timing of these situations. Because I did train as a overhead line engineer, so I did have that engineering background. I worked with a hydro board and then into a contract company called Vanny, who basically, I'm not taking credit for hooking up electricity to the west coast islands of Scotland.
Why not?
Thing called the Trident Line.
Buchanan Line.
This Trident Line, and we went from Skye all the way down the Isles, linking up, big pole work, right down to Campbelltown actually. So I did take power down to Campbelltown, and but the contract finished, so I could have gone and done cabling in Ireland. And I thought, no, it's November. I'm not going to go and dig holes and be down a hole in Ireland. Yeah. So I thought I would take a bit of time out. I ended up working in this little shop, as well as doing other things. I joined the fire brigade, worked in bars, but I worked in this little shop called Brown's in Tobermory. And if anybody's been to Tobermory, Brown's is almost like one of these fantastic old school emporiums where you can buy anything from bicycle clips to, a gallon of creosote. You know what I mean? It's just what. I think
I've probably got binoculars from that shop actually.
Honestly, it's a fantastic shop. So. Yeah. I worked there for a while, and I never thought about this either, but they had, behind the counter, they had almost, let's say, 50, 60 single malts. And remembering that's the early 1990s, that's a lot for the 1990s, a small shop in the Isle of Mull. And that's where I maybe first learned of different distilleries even, and the breadth and depth of styles and distilleries, because I had to taste them and talk to the customers about them as well. So it didn't actually strike me until quite recently that how ahead of the time that was in the whole whiskey market we're dealing with today. Actually, it's the first time I was aware of Gordon MacPhail, for example, because they were a supplier of a lot of it, and again, a connoisseur's choice, single cask where a lot of the whiskies coming through. Another supplier was Fourth Wines. I don't even know if they still exist, but used to do a lot of trainings with them. So that was me experiencing, let's say, whiskey in the bottle and that diverse nature of the landscape of the single malt map. And then I'll tell it's funny. It's a funny story as well. It's a quirk of fate, but one of the guys who used to work in the distillery, I don't think anybody minds me telling this. It's a while ago now, but there was a shift change, day shift to back shift, I think it was, and one of the boys was emptying a washback to the wash charger. Then the other shiftman came in. He'd forgotten that he'd changed this valve, went to pump or clean something else. He cleaned it, then forgot to shut the valve, went to pump another washback, put that whole washback down the drain into the sea. So he was suspended for a little while. And then eventually he moved on. He didn't actually get sacked, but he did move on. And they were looking for a stillman. Hey presto.
Wow.
The door, and that was me. So that was the start of my whiskey journey. And actually, he's now a lorry driver in Ireland, the guy Andy. And every time I do see him, I'll still buy him a pint, you know.
Thanks for the job.
Thanks for keeping that valve open.
But it's just quite incredible, these kind of quirks of fate. I mean, we were speaking to Mark Rainier last week, and basically he won a raffle for a bottle of Scotch, £1,000, I think it was, this bottle of Scotch, which is the Brew Glady. I mean, he was in a different position, I guess. He was already kind of in business and kind of relatively kind of well off, but just that quirk of fate to actually win a prize, to then say, oh, I should get involved with this. You know, somebody gets a sack for putting the merchandise into the sea, or not quite the sack. But it's quite incredible how these little quirks of fate just change people's direction.
It is, and I think that's what I love about the whole breadth and depth of people in the industry. You know, one of my favourite people is even Anthony Wills, for example, down at Kilcoman there, and his backstory. And everybody's got a story, I think, you know, and it's such a bizarre story that most people have, strangely.
Yeah, absolutely. So just say hello to a couple of guys. Paul Dempsey's watching tonight. We know Paul well as well. Lovely guy. Sam England, Phil Dixon, Phil's one of our usuals. Ali Milton, massive Glendronach fan, Ali. So guys, feel free to pop in any questions if you want to ask Stuart anything at all. But yeah, no. So did I read somewhere that you worked at Bowmore as well, or was that a different?
No, I didn't work in Bowmore. No, Alan McConaughey, he went through the kind of normal rounds of Isla. So he did Bowmore, Lafroy, Ben Nevis. He'd been about a bit, as most distillers did back then. You know, he always shifted around. But no, Bowmore to Inverurie, that was me. And then as we knew that, I don't think MD knew that back in 2004 that over the next 15 years we would end up with the 3 distilleries. I'm sure even Billy Walker himself and the team thought that Inverurie would be the one, and that would be almost the company then, never knowing that we would expand to have the 3 that we do.
And it's quite. I mean, I'm trying hard not to kind of. I'm in the middle of reading Ian Buxton's book about Glenglassaugh just now, and I'll kind of come back to that. In terms of kind of the direction that kind of distilleries kind of go for. Just Andrew Smith just distracted me. Andrew from Little Brown Dog saying he's trying to imagine a whiskey world without Stewart Buchanan. No, can't imagine it without him. And I think that goes for all of us actually. One of the biggest names and one of the people we're very familiar with, Stewart. But I guess sticking to the Mull days. How old were you when you moved to Mull then?
Do you know what? Well, I'll tell you another quirk of circumstance then.
Yeah.
Since we're on a roll with that.
Yeah.
So, Dumbarton, born in 1971. So that was me. My grandparents on my father's side, they'd been going up to Mull for many years on holiday. And through the 70s, we did the same. So every summer, school holidays, we were up in Mull. 1979, went up on holiday as we normally did, 6 weeks holiday, with my big bundle of 2 pences that I'd saved up through the year, buying buckets and spades.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
We went back down to Dumbarton after the holiday in the Morris Traveller, and I can remember it to this day, parking right outside the house, the wee shop, 5 of us in the Morris Traveller. My mother must have been going scatty coming down from Oban in these days in the Morris Traveller with 5 kids under 10, and my mother said, just stay in the car, I'm going to get up and unlock the door and we'll go up. So mother went up to the house, come back down, says, oh, we're going to your auntie's. Boom, turn around, beeline back out to my auntie's in Ballach. We didn't think anything of it. Here, while we were away, the house got broken into.
Oh God. Okay.
So ransacked the house. Everything wrecked. Walls, everything. Even my sister's teddy bears were slashed. It was horrible.
Jesus. Yeah.
You know what my mother did? We went to Ratty's that night. We turned the car around and went back to Mull and never left. Summer
Really?
1979.
Yeah.
And again, if I could find that guy who broke into the house, I would shake his hand as well.
Shake his hand as well. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But what a brave thing to do from your mum's point of view, just like, no, sack this. Yeah.
I can't even believe it, to be honest, this day. I still get goosebumps thinking about, what must have been going on. So yeah, went back into the wee holiday place we had up there and started school that summer of 79. And that was it.
I mean, Mull's such a fantastic place. I've been there a couple of times, but it's my wife's absolute favourite. She used to go to Loch Allen with her family every year on holiday, so they would pop across the Mull all the time, and she absolutely loves it. And that story of being a young kid and going away to these places and just disappearing for the day and coming back in when it was too dark, covered in ticks and midgie bites and what have you. So I mean, were you part of it? I think I remember Gordon telling a story about being dropped off in some of the islands when you were like teenagers. Were you part of that as well, with like a case of beer?
I didn't do that. Funny enough, that was what Gordon and his group of friends says. He used to go out in the fishing boats and just get dropped off in the islands and stay there for a week. Yeah. But you're right enough. We would be out dusk till dawn, and we'd be out swimming up the rivers and swimming in pools and just out wilking, getting a bag of wilts and selling it for our pocket monies. You know what I mean? We're never indoors, and I think island life itself it is idyllic. You talk about it, must be a great place to grow up, and it was, and it is, and there was never a dull moment.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, do you go back? Do you still go back often? Have you still got family there? Do you still head back?
Yeah, my mother and brother and older brother and younger sister are still there, and my father's in Oban, so that's quite nice. I can stop off in Oban, have a night there, and get the ferry across. So yeah.
And what about Tobermory? Because I mean, I guess it's been upgraded again since you've been there.
Yeah, there was new still work done after that little hiatus. It had a lot of work done. New stills went in, and funnily enough, it actually, I don't know what was wrong with it today. There was a boiler blow-off valve going off. There was steam belching out the top of the still house, but I think it was actually just a boiler valve. Noticed that on Facebook earlier. But when I think I put on that Facebook, it's the blow-off valve seal. I'll come over and fix it in a minute.
I remember it well. It was always a wee bit slack. You need to tighten it with.
It just needs a wee bit of tightening there. But you can't do much with Tobermory. It's in such a little. The spot itself is kind of almost squeezed into this old courtyard corner, and there's nowhere to go out of that. But I think that's its charm. You don't get many walled distilleries these days that are fully enclosed with this kind of courtyard, and that's for me it's a real historical point to it when you're even walking towards it, or you see it there nestled in that corner. So great fond memories there, and I still know a lot of the guys that work there obviously as well, good pals.
It is one of these wee bizarre ones. It's just actually sitting there and you're kind of looking at it while you're eating your fish and chips or your fancy halibut from the cafe fish. Fish. Yeah, cafe fish is fantastic. Absolutely.
I can't afford that. I just got the chip van and the beer.
So I mean, I guess talking about Benriach and coming over, and then the Glendronach. What were the biggest challenges in terms of the company?
Do you know what? If I look back, it was the fact that maybe everything was too fast. And this isn't a bad thing, but everything was very fast. So if you think about actually getting Benriach, you take over a distillery, Benriach being the first, which was never launched as a single malt before. By the time you even got that place running, then you assessed the 35,000 casks you've got, then you try and bring a range together to put out, but then you're also doing the mass amount of work we were doing in the warehousing. Then we buy Glendronach in 2008. That's only 4 years, and a lot of the stuff we were still even learning about Benriach then, before then we go on to buy Glendronach. If I was to be totally honest, I would love to have just maybe put Glendronach back a couple of years. You can't do that, but that would have really put Benriach on the map then. I sometimes think that the purchase of Glendronach maybe didn't put the focus on Benriach as it should have done. not a bad thing. It is what it is, and we're here now. But
it does feel like that. It kind of feels like Inverurie is starting to kind of emerge, even though it was the start of that process. It's the one that's kind of emerging in Glenrother. I mean, I guess Glenrother feels like it's taking a bit of a rest, and I mean, I guess there's the refit and the funny story about the exciseman's house. My wife and I went to we were renting at Inch at the time. We're bought up in Aberhurder now, but we were renting, and we saw that the exciseman's house was up for rent. It was 50 quid cheaper. We thought, well, that sounds pretty good. We'll go and have a look at it, and fell in love with the house. I mean, it's absolutely gorgeous. I don't know if you've ever got a chance to go inside it, but the spare bedroom looks right into the still house. And I thought, oh my god, what a place to take guests to come and stay. But unfortunately, the ground round about wasn't. We were growing a lot of veg and stuff, and I thought the ground looked really bad for veg. And I thought, oh, let's just not bother. But my brother-in-law was up staying with us, and I said, well, come on, we'll go down to Glenrother. They're just doing the tastings just now, so we popped down for that. And I said, I'll show you the house. So I'm kind of walking past the wee lade, and I'm kind of walking round, and it's just here. And I wonder if I can't see it yet. The minute I get past, I'm thinking, where the hell's it gone? There's nothing. And my brother and sister were both going like, hey, are you sure there was actually a house there? Have you just imagined that house? Completely gone. I couldn't believe it.
It was a beautiful. I've not been in it, but I was up at the door because I was up chatting to the guys. They had lots of goats and sheep and all that in the garden. But but do you know what? Even now when I think about it, you can still. It's not that long ago where there were still a lot of the old buildings that ran right across the lead at the back of that house. You still see maybe even early 90s pictures where there were still a lot of the older buildings there, which have now came down. But yeah.
And I guess a lot of changes there. I mean, a bit more warehousing going in, and is it just a general kind of? I mean, we don't want to kind of talk too much about business, but is it just a little bit about the expansion and things, or just look for a bit more space?
Yeah, do you know what? I think MD's crux, let's say, is in warehousing. You know yourself, warehousing is crazy these days, and what you would have said generally is, okay, let's buy a cheap bit of land and do a centralised warehouse base where all three distilleries can actually join and have a centralised warehouse, and it makes sense to even do that close to the new bridge office and bottling plant. But we did want to make sure that everything that's made on site is staying on site, and that hence the expansion of the warehouses there. And you just need it these days. There's just never enough warehousing.
Yeah, I think all us whiskey fans like the idea of everything being. I mean, physically it's usually impossible to actually have everything on site. I find it hard to think about all this liquid is going to weigh down to the central belt to have something done to it, and then coming back up in bottles. It all sounds really, really weird. But I was reading a story about Glenglassaugh when they were talking about the water way back. I don't know if the historical, when there's something wrong with the water, but it just didn't fit in with the blend at the time. But they did the experiments with Glenrother, so they were passing distillate and water and all sorts back and forth to do experiments, and just crazy.
Well, I'm glad you said you had that book, Russell, because that. And if anybody doesn't have it, you can get it on Amazon.
Yeah, £10
or something like that.
Yeah,
that is an awesome book. Even just showing the quirks of production. Yeah. As you said, this doesn't fit. This is too quirky. It doesn't fit a blender's profile. Let's take the water from Glenrothes. Then let's take the wash from Glenrothes. Then tweaking the still shapes, for example. And they still couldn't tame it. I always say they couldn't. Nobody could have. All these things they tried, they couldn't tame Glenglassaugh, which back then was a negative because a blender wouldn't want to work with it or couldn't work with it because its nuances. Where today, it's one of its most outstanding qualities because it is so unique in itself.
Yeah, just absolutely fantastic. As you say, a great book. But even going back to the initial building and then the selling of it, and the original owner who. Well, was it the original owner died? Was it then his son that basically sold it for a pittance? Yeah, couldn't get rid of it quick enough, and he literally got fleeced. So just the kind of quirks of all that, and then R&B coming in and what they did to the place, and I've always had a huge soft spot for Glenglassaugh because I used to take the kids when they were young, 30 years ago, to Sandend camping, and it was always a distillery I wanted to know or go to or get involved with. We need to pour a Glenglassaugh. I've got the Evolution again. I'm on the Poorman stuff, but What have you got there?
Well, do you know what? And it's, again, goosebump time. I get goosebumps a lot when I think of things. This is actually 2009, so it's a 10-year-old. You know,
Nice.
so going back to that opening period of Glenglassaugh, and I've stuck with the port theme. It's a port finish from 2009. So official 10-year-old bottling that we did in the kind of rare cask series, or the kind of coastal casks, as we call them. But just touching on that as well, same as myself, I remember surfing. When I first moved up to Elgin, I did surf, not that great, but I did surf. I used to go to Sandend, and I'd be on the beach. I would see the distillery. I'd walk up there. I would, scrape the cobwebs off. We would look in. So I knew of it. Anyway, I busted my shoulder in Norway snowboarding, and that was the end of my surfing career. So that was that done. But luckily, when Stewart Nickerson and the team started up there, I remember getting a call from him. And he said, "Do you want to come over and see the new make?" I was like, "Yeah, definitely." So again, it was Ronnie actually that called me, and I remember sitting in the office with Ronnie and Stewart Nickerson, and they let me taste this new make, and that was right back at the very start, just into that 2009 period. They'd only started up 2008, Christmas 2008 or something, and I was a bit, let's say, put out, because I always claimed that I made the best new make spirit at Inverurie as far as the fruit complexity and looking for that sweet, syrupy, beautiful spot that I like in a new make. And I tasted the new make spirit there, and I was like, you it was proper.
Take your time for water, said the other. I mean, Mark was swearing last week from the start, so please yourself.
Well, I really was annoyed because I was like, because it hit my profile. And, when you start getting tropical notes in new make spirit, it's like these notes don't normally come until 25, 30 years, and it's captured right there. So that, never known that we would own it in 2013, less than 5 years later. So even then, it always has attachment. But I don't know if you've got this far in the book of Glenglassaugh, just to touch on that again. Glenglassaugh shouldn't be there today.
Yeah, I mean, it's been closed for more than half of its existence. I mean, it's surviving despite itself. I mean, I've always said if I win the biggest Euro millions I could possibly win, hundreds and hundreds of millions, it's one of these ones you would love to be able to work with as a complete independent.
Yeah.
And just plow cash into it. But I suppose it's unfortunate in where it is physically. It's in a beautiful place physically, but not a great place because it's off the beaten track. But then your Balblairs survive with 4,000 visitors a year, 5,000 visitors a year. So
yeah. And I hope that whole northeast coast will get a bit of tourism again through maybe the circumstances we're going to go into, because it's a beautiful coastline, it really is. Yeah. But I don't know if you're this far ahead in the book, but it was 2006. Did you get to the bit where the guys were in stealing the copper?
No, I haven't got that far yet. Okay.
And that's one thing why I say it shouldn't be here today, because I think Ireland, or Edmonton as it is, when they were kind of getting it all ready for sale and fit for purpose and shining it up, ready for a future owner, 2006 it was the same time as actually the copper still wee statue thing gets stolen from Dufton. So copper being very expensive, these guys had broken into the distillery. They'd ripped out a lot of pipe work, and they'd put one initial grinder scar down the top of the mash tun dome, beautiful copper mash tun dome. Yeah. But luckily, there was a security guy doing a warehouse check, saw them, called the police, they ran off. I think they eventually found them later. But you can still to this day see that scar of the mash tun dome. I keep on saying as well, if it wasn't for that security guy, 5 hours later, every bit of copper, stills a lot would have been ripped out of there, and you would not have opened that place up again from that. It would have just been, boom, done. So we're lucky it's even here at all.
Well, I had that. I mean, I can't remember the name of the chap about 20 years ago. And that's one of the things that's mentioned in the book when they say he's gosh, I wish I remember what his name was, but he thought it was unlikely that you'd ever see distilling at Glenglassaugh again. So that was about 2001. Yeah. And people just sort of, but it's still there. It's still going. It's still strong. Yeah. I think it's going to be one of the biggest. There's so many people talking about it now. I had a chat with a guy, one of the shop's regulars last night, and he'd never had Glenglassaugh before. So I've sent him a sample. So he's going to be the next one that's going to pick it up and run with it.
And again, that's us hitting double figures now. So let's say just watch this space.
Yeah, absolutely. Fantastic. Really looking forward to it. So I mean, going back to being in the industry and working away and doing all the things you do. I mean, in terms of influences, or people that you've worked with that have been your biggest encourager, your biggest influences, who would you say has been kind of, in terms of mentor kind of type?
Obviously, Billy, gee whiz, you know what I mean? Looking or working around the warehouse, and being in some cases been left to do what I wanted to do and look at casks in the warehouse, which he had full confidence in men to do. But there's one old guy, actually, he's passed away now, but a guy an engineer in Tobermory. I will say he was the one that taught me about valves and about the pumps and about distillery equipment.
Yeah.
And that was funny. A guy called Alistair Brown, and even now, I can picture him in his boiler suit, bending down on one knee, just like this, smoking a roll up, watching me do the pump, or the valve that was opening up. But that was the best way to learn. He was just like, Buchanan, strip that down, Buchanan, do this. So that was it. And strangely, actually, my niece has gone out with his grandson, which is quite a funny week. So if it wasn't for Bruni, as we called him, he probably sparked that passion for staying in the distillery, because who knows if that overhead lines contract came up, I would have left and maybe gone back to the lines again. But him teaching me, I think, everything about the distillery internally kept my passion going for. It's funny, you can't say for whiskey, because the passion originally wasn't for whiskey. It was for production of whiskey. It was for the machinery in whiskey. The whiskey tasting bit didn't come till later, until you get to Benriach and maybe experience all the warehousing there. So it's strange that my whiskey passion came through in the engineering, really. So Bruni, but McConaughey's, I've been working with McConaughey from day one. So Alan, obviously, as well.
I think you're absolutely right. I'm just looking at the comments again there, David. It was David I was mentioning, David Muir, one of our customers. He's apologised for being late. I must be a bit of a hard taskmaster. He's just joined in. I think he was at work. You're forgiven, David. It's okay, no problem. And one of my old friends from Mauritius has joined in tonight, so he's watching from Mauritius. But no, you're absolutely right. I think for me, whiskey's almost like a kind of an after product, not an after product, but one of the benefits of being in the industry, because there's so many fantastic people. The process is great. I love driving home to Aberhurda, because it's just field after field after field of barley, and all you can think about is what that's going to go into. You're watching the process, the combine. I mean, I'm known for being a bit of a combine harvester and farming geek. Farming's the thing I wanted to be.
You must be in your element now, then. All the harvesting is going to be starting then.
Oh God, yeah! It's like combine porn all the way home every single day. It's like, oh, there's a new Holland, there's a new deer, there's a absolutely fantastic. I always tell a funny story. When I was nursing, when I was a community nurse, we used to have our meeting in the hospital on a Thursday morning, and always, or very often, there would be a medical student with us for the day, or he or she would be with the team for about a month. But there'd be a request for them to come out and see what we do for an afternoon or something. So that was always on a Thursday. This consultant would say, "Can you take so-and-so out?" And no problem. So driving back to, I'm in my 50s by this stage. I've got a sort of late teens, early 20s, young female medical student, nothing in common whatsoever. We're trying to make kind of conversation driving back out to Inverurie. And I get to Thainston, and this brand new, shiny brand new Holland tractor pulls out. The guy's obviously just bought it, and I came that close to saying, "My, that's a bonny looking tractor." and I just stopped, because I thought she's going to say he's a complete and utter.
God, you're a great dinner guest. Well, you know what, as well, and it is, sometimes it's funny thing. Like, I'm obviously a bit my motorbikes, or another thing that I enjoy is my new midget that I bought. Well, not a new midget, an old midget that I bought myself, the VNG. But that goes back. That goes back to, again, I suppose, my childhood, because that was my grandparents, my father's side's garage. They were all Austin dealers going back to when cars were first actually on the road. They were actually, before that, they were cart makers, and then progressed to motor vehicles and etc. and old MGs and the midgets, the old Austins, they were my playground in the scrapyard behind the garage, just beside the house. So when I couldn't travel and have a birthday party for my 50th there, just past in April, I thought, well, do you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to buy myself a birthday present, and it's going to be a wee midget. So every time I sit in it, I think about even playing in a similar car. Yeah. There's pictures of us in the bonnet of my dad's MGs back in the 70s, and it's a great wee connection there. But just to go back to production a little bit, see another thing that I think, without getting too spiritual about it, there's two things I remember about being in the whiskey. Let's call it three in production. One's the noise. Yeah. See, when you're working in an old distillery, you hear that the pipe work, the distillery living and breathing. You don't get that anymore, really. Even the old Ogden pumps that used to pump the condensate away, now it's all done by Venturi spiralized things, and back then it was all clackety clack pumps and noises and squishes and squeaks and pops and bangs. That captured me. But also I remember looking in a mash Tobermory. It was the windows you have in the wash stills. Yeah. I remember just watching a still coming in, and these bubbles were changing. They went from being a washing machine, almost rummaging around, and it went to light bubbles, and then these little kind of almost blowing washing liquid bubbles started popping up, and the wee kind of colours refracting off it. I was hypnotised by that, just looking at that window. And it's one thing I always remember, I did it often enough. I would always just love these wee bubbles popping about the mash tun, the wash still window. And even another thing in mashing, which is another thing that I used to get hypnotised by, and it's almost like getting that perfect mash. And I don't think everybody does this anymore, but when you're mashing in an old school mash tun with your plough and rake, and everything's coming in the spout, when your mash is landing in the spout on the rake and the rake arm itself, to get the perfect mash, you should be watching that water. You should be watching the dispersion of the mash itself going back to the back of the mash tun. And you should end up, by the time you've dropped your mash, dropped your barley and your water together, at a perfect timing that it's come down together, you should end up with what we call these butterfly wings. You see almost butterfly wings in your mash tun. And when you saw that, you knew that the perfect drainage, you did perfect mash consistency and dropped it just right. And that was always another thing I still think about now in mashing in, is like just aiming to get that perfect butterfly in the froth on top of the mash. I don't think you get that anymore either.
Well, yeah, I mean, everything's kind of mechanized now, and you've just got the one man working a distillery and things, and yeah, I mean, I think you're right. It's all changed. But you talk about the sound. I mean, the sound, as you say, at this time of year, and I'm in my element. It's just that kind of constant drone of the combine harvester in the dig, because that's all you can hear when you live in the countryside. And it is that kind of thought that's going into whiskey. But yeah, no, we were talking about the kind of side effect, the people, the process. It's so much more than just a drink. So much more than just.
Yep. And again, I don't think MD could really capture their industry history in a nutshell, because there's so many angles to come from. And again, another thing as well, everybody comes from a different angle as well, and that's another great thing that gives you that real mix and bowl of people. Again, I'm going to get spiritual again, but I don't think there's another spirit that actually touches your soul. When you taste something, and it's more than a taste, it's more than just saying that's nice, that's a flavour, that length of it. When something touches you in there, that's a feeling I don't get from any other drink, any other spirit. The single malt does it.
Yeah, absolutely. Completely, absolutely. Yeah, and just that kind of historical thing as well. So, I mean, we touched a little bit on kind of relaxing cars, motorbikes and stuff, and I guess you've kind of missed the last year and a half of globetrotting, really, being all over. I mean, when you are globetrotting, how do you relax when you're away on the road? I mean, what sort of things do you do? Are there things you have to take with you that kind of keep you grounded for home, or?
No, well, I think one of the things you learn fast is actually pack as little as possible. So basically, it's a kilt and 5 shirts. Boom. especially when you're lugging a kilt around, it can get your baggage. I think I remember going out at first. Oh yeah, look at all my 5 kilt outfits for every different evening. No chance in it. So, you pack wisely and get as much sleep as you can. I'm lucky I can sleep in a knife edge. So get me on a flight. Boom, I'm out. Wake up on the other side and ready for action. What I do miss about the travel, and it's funny because a lot of people, somebody asked me the other day, do you miss, it was Kirsten actually, who said, do you miss travel? And I goes, well, see, when I was in a place, it sounds fantastic going to Tokyo, going to New York, going to Chicago, any city, all these big Sydney, whatever. I'm not saying you don't get time to enjoy it, but I'm there to work.
Yeah.
My tourism of Sydney was one of the guys saying, do you want to come and see the harbour, the Opera House? It's like, yeah, I would jump out, take a picture of my kilt on, jump back in the car, then on to the next job, I'm not saying I'm not interested in doing anything touristy, but I'm actually not. I actually think to myself, these things will still be there when I can go back and enjoy them in that time when I should be enjoying them. I'm there to work. And actually, what I do miss is the adrenaline of that.
Yeah.
Because when you've got a flight schedule or you've got an annual schedule that you have to be A, B, C, D, hit it, boom, bang, flight, train, plane, hotel, whatever, that's a brush. That's what I've missed, funnily enough.
Yeah. I know what you're saying about the whole kind of being abroad environment. I've never been in that position, but I remember a friend of mine worked for he was a telecommunications guy. He was sent over to Boston. It was a few of us doing a half marathon, and he was in the car, and of course he was just back from Boston, and the rest of us were saying, "Oh, lucky you've been in Boston." He says it was rubbish. I was there for 2 weeks. I was in a cupboard for 2 weeks. I was actually sent there because the system wasn't working, so they hated me. Nobody spoke to me. He said it was absolute hell. I went to my room and I cried every night. I'm so glad I'm home. We're like, oh shit, okay, so it wasn't that good. It wasn't that good after all. So that kind of struck home to me. The reality is that this global travel often sounds, brilliant, but you're right. You're working, and depending how well the job's going. If the job's going badly, it's awful. If it's going well, you're still in a hurry. You've got to go to somewhere else. And
I think as well. I think the danger is unless you keep busy out there. It might sound odd as well, but see if you lose momentum, for me, it's all about bang, bang, bang. It's like getting out there doing it. I don't think I would even like a weekend off somewhere because you lose that momentum and I want to be all on it, There was one time, and I must admit, I grudgingly went, although it was lovely for them to invite me, in Taiwan. The guys in their importer's son favourite, they offered to take me up in a spa day one Sunday up to the mountains, these hot spas. And I was going, there's nothing worse I want to do. I've got to just stay in my bed and eat pizza. But hey-ho, I couldn't. So I went up to this spa. It turned out hilarious. It was one of these great things where you went from different temperatures of natural things. And even these wee nibbly feet fish. And they're all laughing at me because they had no fish on their feet, and now the swarm,
the Scottish feet were getting well and truly clean.
So I did do one tourism day, so that's the only one I've done, I think. Very funny.
Because Taiwan's a great whiskey country, of course. I mean, and I guess the Paul that's listening tonight, Paul will know it very well because Spey is one of the, that's one of their biggest markets, isn't it? It's the Taiwan.
Yeah, again, crazy. When you think about it, it's only the size of Scotland.
Yeah.
What you got, 22 million people, and 80% of these people stay around the coastline. The density of it. Everything else in the interior is all mountainous, really. So it's an amazing place. I just love it. I would say it is one of my favourite places, and it was actually probably one of the first places I went to ambassadorially after leaving production. And great people, honest to goodness. Most people will say that, but honest to goodness, the times I've had in Taiwan, the most friendliest people out there. And I think there's it's almost like I feel a Scottishness in them,
Yeah.
I always felt they were kind of almost like the Scottish Chinese nation.
The Scottish Chinese. Yeah. See, I mean, you touched on, you mentioned the Kirsten there. I don't know if many of the guys that are watching tonight, they saw the announcement from Rachel Barry today that there's a new assistant blender going to be working with our Kirsten Ainsley. Am I right? And how much contact have you had with Kirsten so far?
Yeah, well, she only started last week, so she's hot off the press, and I think either Monday or Tuesday was our first day physically into Newbridge with Rachel. So, I had a call with her, a nice chat for an hour on Monday morning. Actually, it was nice that she actually reached out and we set up a wee video call together and had a good blether, a bit like this actually. Getting to know each other just that way. I've got some other things to do with her, as this part of the year goes on, but she's got her work cut out. So I think she'll be head down, glasses up, and she's got a lot to get through. Through the stories and the complexity of what we do ourselves through maturation and stylistically. She's going to be a great asset to the team.
So, I mean, how involved are you yourself with blending? I mean, I know you've made whiskey and you're still making whiskey. In terms of the actual kind of blending part of it, how much hands-on do you do these days?
In the Benriach days, when I was managing Benriach, that was pretty full on because at that point we did a lot of reciprocal vatted malt as well. So our vatted malt contracts, the litres we were putting out at the door then was crazy. Not all Benriach because it was reciprocal spirit deals that we would take together. And we would send them in tanker or drums or IBCs across the world. So that was kind of going to third party blends, not under our name, but just as a component that they would then take American grain or other grains with and make their own blends out of. But by God, that was a lot of blended work there and great. I'd have Bisley's recipes and then we would make them up to the customer's own specs, and that was great. Same as, again, in the warehousing, you're looking at Benriach, particularly when we're going through these re-rack days. Billy was happy for me to watch that progression of the cask, call it when it was ready, push it a little bit more, see what's happening here, there. Or even deciding, if we're going to do some maybe old vintage re-racks, which cask to put them into and see that development there. So it was great to get that experience and again, watch these whiskies grow that you'd had part in and moved through. And luckily, funnily, again, something I didn't realise, that even working with the new range of 10s and 12s we have here in the new code range Benriach, a lot of the liquid in there is stuff that I personally moved from A to B to C or even filled as new make back in the day. So that was great times. It really was. And I remember at the time when I was managing Benriach, I stayed in Longmorn. So it's only like 500 metres away. I stayed in the old excise house there, and I would walk to work. I would have a list of re-racks to do, or even casks filling to do. And even if we were to try and get through some of that workload, we'd get the boys to kind of pull the cask down and just store them in the vat room. But I'll still be there till midnight filling these off, getting through that re-rack workload or that disgorging workload for the guys to come in again in the morning and then do the kind of stowing of them again. So it goes back to that thing. It was 24/7. It's not a 9 to 5. It's never a 9 to 5. It's never been a 9 to 5 for me from the start, whether it's actually production days or even now. It's a lifestyle, you could say.
It is all encompassing, isn't it? And that's the thing. I mean, I came into this job doing it part time, but I mean, I don't stop thinking about what I'm doing and ideas. I mean, obviously it's Mike's business, but just continually thinking about things that could be done differently, or ideas to kind of bring into the business, and even this kind of getting people along for the blether. Who else should be asking, all that kind of stuff is fantastic.
But it's quite satisfying. And again, I didn't realise it when we did launch at the time, but when you can taste something that you've made, or going back to that 1976, which I remember re-racking and following its progression, then it ends up in bottle. That's a nice wee feeling. You can sit back and have a dram of that as well.
Yeah. I would love that. Phil Dixon's come in with a great question. Actually, just saying, what's the best non-Scottish dram that you've enjoyed?
Tell you what, actually, fun enough, if I was to say it was a Taiwanese whiskey, which one do you think I was going to say?
Well, I would assume Kavalan, but
yeah, as much as I do love Kavalan, I've been there many times, but I had this most fantastic afternoon in a place called Nantau. I think I've got the pronunciation roughly right there. And it used to be
not in a position to correct you.
like other kind of spirits and wines in Taiwan, it was state owned, but then it was into private ownership. I went there to visit it. Beautiful little distillery out in the country, out in the fruit growing region of Taiwan. But they used to make fruit wines as well as then moving into distillate. I was tasting this stuff that was like peated, sweet, then matured in a lychee cask.
Right.
You know? and being a sweet tooth whiskey drinker fan myself, that hit me every time. So what was supposed to be maybe an hour visit, I was there for about 8 hours and about 30 odd drams. So yeah, I would put Nantou as one of the best experiences, tasting something that far away, but with a fantastic palate that I enjoy. Another one was with the Westland guys. Used to travel Westland a lot, the US guys. Again, brilliant team. Great to see how, again, that seems like not that long ago now, but they're coming into good age, as far as what they're doing up in Seattle. And another one, just to tick a bell in another part of the world, would be Starward down in Australia. And again, that was another flight that was taken. Their old distillery used to be right beside the airport. Again, early for a flight, had hours to kill. Went to see Paul, who's a good friend who works there. Again, 5 hours later, come out of there onto my flight. The best sleep I've ever had in a flight on the way back to Dubai, wherever it was. But again, the depth and breadth of what they had was phenomenal. So that's three, I suppose, different parts of the world that I really remember vividly.
Yeah. Whiskey is definitely one of the best pre-flight hypnotics for sure. That's. My wife's just asked. I'll go amiss if I don't ask this question because she's a complete foodie. She loves food, and obviously she's a huge fan of Mull. But we were kind of chatting about tonight, and she was saying she was really interested in knowing from a food and whiskey pairing, what's your favourite food with whiskey?
It's funny because I'll tell you one of the ones that catches my eye. Inverurie Curiosities, for example, always been a stalwart favourite of mine in the core range. Love it to death. And we were it was the US, and I can't remember where it was, but it was the US definitely. And we had that core range in the back of the truck. Went for lunch one day. What did I get for a lunch as a starter? It was pork belly on a barbecue with maple syrup. As soon as I could smell that plate coming towards me, I said to the guy who was with me, I was like, let's go and get that bottle of Curiosities out of the car because this needs to go together.
Yeah.
Barbecued pork belly, and maple syrup.
Yeah.
Absolutely amazing. So that for me is definitely where my palate goes. But other things like what a lot of people don't, or what I like doing, was quite funny, and maybe it's the coastal part anyway, a big seafood lover. But what do you have with fish? Normally you've got a squeeze of lemon. So when you look at maybe another Inverurie, it's got that wee citrusy edge, perfect with even a most delicate white fish, which you wouldn't normally imagine. Actually, Evolution, which you have there, is fantastic with, for example, lobster tail's a bit extravagant, but you can go crayfish or you can go prawns, any kind of white fish.
You say lobster tail's extravagant, but actually living in this part of the world, I mean, you're not that far from me in Aberhurder. We're reading up to Macduff to the little wee quayside seafood shops, and we're picking up lobsters for £8. And I came home with a bag of fish. I just took the dog for a walk to the beach, and I came back with a bag of fish for £22. I'd halibut, I'd lobster, I mean, I'd all sorts of things in there, and just fantastic. So yeah,
I think even more so now. I know back in Tobermory, there's some of the fishermen's, young sons will sit there with a bag and sell that for a £5 each with a real mixture of everything to the tourists. So yeah, that's the thing. I remember I used to work in fishing boats when I was younger at school as well. I would eat scallops straight hand dive, straight from the shell raw. Very lucky they brought up with that. So. But yeah, I like that combination of white fish and Glenglass Evolution were a good example of something that goes well with that.
Yeah. So I mean, have you found you've had more? I mean, have you been as busy as ever? It sounds like you're on the go all the time. You love your job, obviously. I mean, do you get much time to do your stuff? I mean, or are you happier working just now?
Quite happy working.
Yeah.
No, I'm very lucky. As I say, I've got even this week. Actually, we talked about Kenny going to Poland. Actually,
Yeah.
I'm actually doing a virtual tasting to Poland, the same festival he's doing, but I'm going to do it virtually. I can be to Australia in the morning. I can a few coming up for the US, which are, I think the latest I've been on to was with Canada, and that was a 4 a.m. finish, starting at midnight. So yeah, it doesn't put me up or down doing these.
I mean, do you drama all these, or do you try and kind of keep it? Because we found when we were doing with the shop across, gosh, it must have started probably about. Well, started about July, the kind of online tastings, and then they just got progressively more and more and more leading up to Christmas, and then it continued to about April, where we were doing about 8 a weekend between Mike and I was finding I couldn't drink, like I just couldn't. I know you're sitting at home and stuff, but you want to kind of drink along with the group. I remember watching you speak to, I think it was Kevin at the Mash Tun about the whole thing, and I asked a couple of questions about what you should do. You gave me a great tip about getting the first drink poured early. Make sure people are kind of enjoying themselves before you pour them with kind of chat and stuff.
Yeah.
But the other thing was also, it's always better if you're having a dram with who you're doing a tasting to. But I was finding I was having to pour, when I was doing a gin tasting, I was having to just pour tonic because I couldn't keep up. So, I mean, working till 4 a.m. and doing maybe 3 or 4 of these.
Yeah, I think more importantly as well, if you're like Australia, I can be on Australia at 8 o'clock in the morning, my time.
Yeah.
You might go to nip to the shop. It's like, better not drive to Tesco's. You know what I mean?
I've had 5 drams.
But I must admit, even when I'm drinking any whiskey, you're lucky if I'm coating my tongue. That's the way I like to drink. I coat the tongue, let it do its work, and that's enough for me. And I'll get as much enjoyment out of nosing a dram as anything else.
For sure, absolutely.
And I'm sure you've done it. You'll be sitting maybe drinking a glass of water or talking away. Yeah. You nose the glass of water. It just becomes almost that muscle memory of nosing glasses.
We absolutely mentioned that exact thing last week. That's exactly what happens. You open a bottle of water and you're straight in with it. Oh, Christ, that's water. You just can't help it. But that's what you should be doing. We went down to, is it Dr. Gordon Steele? One of the guys, he does a lot of the diploma stuff for the Edinburgh Whisky Academy. And Mike and I went down to just before lockdown, we went down to the course. And he says, everybody says that the best way to learn how to nose is to smell everything. Just always stick your nose and stuff. But that's what happens. You open a bottle of water and that's definitely water.
I said that the other day to somebody as well. It's like you can only build your hard drive by experiencing things. Yeah. That's a great thing about travel as well. I remember in Vietnam, going down these roads in Vietnam and just smelling the fruits at the fruit sellers and baskets in the side of the road. Yeah. I said to the guys, "Can we stop this one? Can we stop at this one?" Before I knew it, I went back into the hotel room with this basket of fruits that I'd never seen before. Yeah. Never experienced before. And even just picking these noses up, it's all memory. And I always refer to even my biker's leather jackets, for example, or all that.
Yeah. But again, it's a sensation because when you've got your biker's leather jacket on, I mean, I've never actually been a motorcycle rider, a driver as such. I've been on the back of a few, but it's one of these things I'm fully aware of that you never ever get fed up. Every single time you step off a bike, you want to go back on it. That's not what happens when you step out of a car. Quite often you step out of a car and you're like, I'd be very glad if I didn't see you again for a week. But you never get that feeling with a motorbike. Yeah. So the smell of motorbike leather is going to be an exciting smell.
Yeah, and that's the funny thing about even in the midget, even just driving the midget with an old school 1970s car, smelling the engine again. Open top, smelling the engine, smelling the petrol,
oil and petrol. Yeah.
It takes me back to our kids at the garage, smelling the oily rags. Funnily enough, just to touch on that, one of the best tasting notes I remember, I think it might be Scotch Malt Society for a Glen Scotia, or definitely a Campbelltown one, but it was something along the lines of a McPhail's Tarry Rag off the Parahandy. That might not mean a lot to other people outside Scotland, but been working in fishing boats, I can think of that smell as well.
Well, you brought me back. Just before we came on, I was watching a compilation of the great late Sean Locke comedy, and I was going to ask you the question what would be the dictionary definition of Stewart Buchanan. But before I ask the question, I don't know if you've seen the clip, but Sean's definition was that he didn't think that it would have to be a fragrance. And it would be an old vet's flannel in Tarmacadam.
I did see that. Actually, that reminded me of that same Parahandy story when I watched that the other night. I'd be very similar to that, I think, actually.
Tarmacadam and a vet's flannel.
One thing I am bad at doing, it's something I do. There's two habits I have when I'm doing whiskey tastings. I can't keep my hands still.
Mm.
So a lot of people say I'm always, and if my hands aren't moving, I've got to clasp them or hold them tight. So people go, I love it when you're so I'm doing this all the time, which makes terrible videoing, because if people try and edit videos that I'm in, they can't do it because my hands are all over the place. So I don't know that I'm like a wild octopus, I think, sometimes there. And what other habit?
Maybe a slight Italian side. That's the.
Yeah. I know.
The comedian.
I'm a bit of a hand up as well.
I think Danny Boyd is a good sketch when he talks about the Italians doing everything with their hands, but in Scotland it's just the head. It's like the nodding chicken. You see her over there. No, her.
But I think as well. Again, didn't touch on it so much, but we've saying like traveling, and maybe it's the same case as Gordy as well. Like, nothing really scared me about traveling. I'm nervous about doing this, nervous about going there. It's like, no, bring it on. And Gordy, he left Mull when he was 17. Didn't even finish Dobbin High School. He was offered to go to the Amazon for 3 years, straight out of fourth year, and he was like, yeah, okay. Didn't come back for 3 years.
Yeah.
Then actually didn't go. He came back to Mull for about a month and went straight into Sierra Leone for 3 years. Then had to run out of there when when that obviously went through its issues. So yeah, I think
he seems to completely love what he does as well. I mean, that's you watch him on TV, and the passion that he puts into where he is and what he does is enthusiastic. I mean, it's on a par with David Attenborough for me. You just get sucked in, and that's, to me, somebody who completely shares their story. Just to qualify that, in my previous job, having to kind of do sort of read research papers or be involved in that kind of the research process, I found very difficult that actual parts of the statistical part of it. And I remember going to the sign guidelines. This is a body of people down in Edinburgh who make guidelines for GPs. And I went to three times. I went to their training for just to understand the process, so you could then criticise these papers. And I only ever got as far as lunchtime on the third day before I was lost again. I thought, it's gone. But there was this one guy came up on a course I was doing from Cambridge who was basically a research David Attenborough. And I was just enthralled by everything he said. So sometimes it's about how you put it across and who you are. And Gordon's definitely got that ability.
I think when it comes to talking confidently about something, I think that's something he can do. Obviously, he didn't go and study zoology. He went and hummed stuff around the Amazon. He was out there on the job.
Proper lived experience.
And I suppose in some ways I did the same in whiskey. So it means when, again, I'm in conversation with whiskey now, I can talk honestly and hand in heart that whatever you could probably ask me, I've probably done anyway. I'm not having to think, what's the answer to that question? It's like, well, I remember I did this and that was what happened, So that doesn't bring confidence in you saying, well, I want to be standing up and talking and giving it all the spiel. It just means that you're comfortable doing it.
Yeah. And I think that's a big difference, because I'm totally not. I'm socially phobic. I mean, even this kind of thing makes me anxious. I know it's a good thing to do, and I really, really enjoy it. And afterwards, I really love it. But I've never been a confident public speaker. And I think a lot of people who aren't confident public speakers, but they just know their subject, so they can do it. And I think that's the key. And you're right. If the fact that you've come through the industry the way that you have gives you the authority. And I think
I don't know if you've had Mark Watt on yet, and I urge you to have a chat with Mark if you can. And we were in Japan together, and we were saying that. See ourselves. We're not big, gregarious public speakers on top of the bar.
That's right. Yeah.
We have fun in our own group, but
Yeah.
we're actually quite like I've actually always felt I'm quite a cellular little person doing my own little thing there, and I think Mark said the same thing actually. Funnily enough.
Yeah. Absolutely, and I would assume Gordon would say exactly the same.
Yeah.
In his line of work as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. Would you ever fancy swapping jobs?
Do you know what? I always joke that I've probably got the wilder side of life than he has. He can be dealing with lions and tigers, and having to jump off cliffs, getting run away from elephants. But I've got whiskey masses to deal with. So, I would take the wild animals any day of the week.
Somebody asking you about a strain of yeast and how that's going to get it. Okay. Yeah. I mean, is there anything that you'd any part of the process you'd rather be more involved with, or do you think the job you've got just now is the kind of perfect one?
I think the reason I've kind of moved into it, again, almost every 5 years through my almost 30, it's almost been a change of learning and development and learning all the way through. And this is the part that I'd never seen. So thoroughly enjoying it. And even now, there's still new parts of the world to go, and it's an ever-growing whiskey market, ever-growing whiskey consumer breadth. So I'm definitely not finished this part of my journey in the industry. What am I now, 50 years old? I've got a wee bit of time yet to do some other stuff, so I'll keep travelling the world and spreading the news.
It's not like a career that people typically retire from early anyway. I mean, it's one of these ones that people just go on and on, isn't it?
Yeah, I have to get shoveled out.
Along with the draft.
Yeah. But it's exciting. I think it makes me excited when you see markets grow. You go into Australia's a good example of that. Poland even.
Yeah.
When you go into a market which is maybe at its infancy, then you go back to it. And you see that depth and breadth of the consumer grow. It's not, for me, it's not about making more money. It's not my money. For me, it's actually seeing the people grow, seeing the people enjoying it, or new people coming to single malt as a category.
Yeah. And in terms of the kind of newness, I mean, you've got all these kind of new distilleries here, people like Nick Nean who are doing their organic thing, and you've got the whole kind of terroir thing, I guess. I mean, we had a huge chat about terroir with Mark Rainier last week. I mean, what's your thoughts on the sort of terroir kind of argument, if you like?
I'm all over it. Look at Glenglassaugh, for example.
Yeah.
And again, people talk about terroir. You could talk about the barley fields that you're surrounded by at Portsoy there right at the moment.
Yeah.
Look, you take a walk down that beach and you see the old lime kilns, which will tell you what that water source is going to give you, high minerality. And then you take the coastal element, but then you take the social element, that social history element as well into it, which encompasses and affects everything as you go through as well. So no, I've always been a big supporter of terroir, and I think our three distilleries show that quite well.
Yeah, I would say, the coastal element of Glenglassaugh is always something that I've enjoyed. I love a coastal drink anyway. I like a coastal gin. The first one I tried, the first seaside gin I tried was Edinburgh, and just that kind of lovely saline element to it, I think is fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah. Just touch on Glenglassaugh. The funny thing is, and if anybody's not seen me doing a Glenglassaugh tasting, particularly the Revival, that's the one that holds for me the most funk, because it has got this real depth of something you cannot put your finger on, no matter how many times you go back to it. But Glenglassaugh, you don't even have to speak about Glenglassaugh. You look at people's faces as they nose it, particularly the Revival. This happens. Eyebrow. The glass to the nose, the nostril sniffs, then the eyebrow goes up and goes. What is in this? I've never had that combination of flavours before,
I must look out for that if we've got it in a lineup in the future.
The Glenglassaugh eyebrow.
The Glenglassaugh eyebrow. That's an actual term. So I get one of the things. I mean, you are a keeper of the Quaich.
Mm-hmm.
So what's that like? What's it like to be in that kind of position?
Goosebumps again. One of the best evenings in my life.
Yeah.
And again, a huge honour and a huge surprise as well. I remember I was in Singapore, and my colleague Douglas phoned me up and said, "Stuart, we've got it sorted, but you need to get back from Singapore very quickly." I thought, what have I done? I thought I was in the stick for something. I thought I was going to be P45 time. So anyway, I was like, and they said, "I've got your flights are all sorted. You just need to get back." I thought, Jesus Christ, here, what's happening? Anyway, turned up and back in Edinburgh, landed in Edinburgh airport. 5 hours later, I was up in up at in what do you call it again, in Blether. Yeah, it's like then it was a dinner. You know, I was like, half of the existing Scottish royalty was at the top table. You know what I mean? I was like, what? I was like 12 hours ago. I was in Singapore here. And it was actually fantastic because my mother and stepfather were along as well, and they thoroughly enjoyed that evening, and that they still talk about that. But actually, just to be there and standing amongst all the other keepers, ones that were actually getting initiated, or the ones that were becoming, you know, their 10-year master keepers, and they actually get the ceremony itself. It's just phenomenal.
Yeah.
And all good friends in the industry as well. And it's, you look around, no matter where in the world they're from, you know them. It's friendship. It's, you know, it's not about companies. It's not about rivalry of this whiskey. Whiskey's never like that. But it just shows you how everything's just such a solid organisation, really, of like-minded people.
That's the most remarkable thing I've found about it. I mean, even coming from the NHS and, you know, caring, sharing, you know, profession, all that kind of stuff, but there's a huge level of competition and a little bit of the old kind of backstabbing for career ladder and all that kind of stuff in there. It's one of these things that when you used to come up with an idea, you were always wary of sharing it, that somebody would steal your idea. You just don't get that feeling in this industry at all. It's very, very different for me.
Yeah. I think that's another thing. It's like, why, you know, there's so many, you know, even looking at cask maturation, and again, I'll happily say that it was great to be starting on that journey back in 2004, and then cask development, you know, that whiskey renaissance period when that depth of warehouses just got broader and broader and broader. But even one person is doing a port cask to another person who's doing a port cask, or Madeira cask, Marsala cask, we're all dealing with the same cask, but there's so many nuances within that they're all going to be different anyway. You know, it's for me, yeah, that's another thing that I don't think anybody can believe is the breadth and depth of what we have in this industry.
Yeah. I mean, I can't believe I haven't even spoken about cask really in terms today. We've hardly touched on kind of the development or trips to Jerez, or is that something you get to do? Do you get to, or ordinarily would you head off down to Jerez to go and speak to Pedros about getting casks and things?
Unfortunately, I never made it down there, even when I was in production. I think Alan had been there a couple of times, but I'd never quite made it over, which is a shame. And even actually, I know some of the ambassadorial guys, Paul being one of them out there, they had their Jerez trips, which I was almost going to go on, but I was always too busy. I'm not saying these guys are slacking and they've got more time off than I've got, but maybe they have.
The Sherry Club, I can't remember. Was it Scott and Ian and yeah. So they're all slackers, okay. So.
And even when our good friend Jan Beckers, when he was living in Spain, I always meant to go and visit him down there, but never quite made it. So, and it's strange because my mother lived in Spain for 15 years.
Wow.
Never made it over. But definitely a tick list to do.
Well, there's time yet. Absolutely. Yeah. Did you ever fancy, or is the thought of becoming maybe an independent bottler or something that's ever crossed your mind?
You know, I did that. No.
Open and close question. There you go.
I just love. I really love our three brands. I really do. And as I say, like I said, they'll have to shovel me out. They'll have to bury me in a box just in the back of the warehouse.
I think you're right. I mean, the variety's there, right? I started off with a Benriach 12, and I'm now. Well, you'll know what I'm on now.
So that colour, aye.
There's no guessing. There's no really guessing what I'm on now. That's the proper stuff now. The sherry. So that's the Oloroso handful that I'm on now. From I think I picked it up. Gosh, I'm trying to think, when did I pick that up? It was during lockdown. So it was not long after you'd done the video to say the centre was open again for.
Yeah.
I think they just started opening it for tastings, and you could get access to the shop.
Was now, but they've just changed them actually. That I was actually down Monday, and that was them just changed over to the new set.
For the handfuls.
Yeah.
So what have they got? They've got the.
I think it's that a 94 again. I believe it is 94. Oloroso, and I believe a younger, might be a 10 or 12-year-old PX. Awesome.
And they were starting to experiment with a bit of a chocolate pairing as well.
Yeah, do a nice wee chocolate pairing there. Inverurie as well, the new visitor centre there. They do a fantastic sensory platter. We did have a lady making some macarons for us, which paired very well with the Inverurie new set. So some nice stuff going on up there, as well as almost it's not a deconstruction, in its own right, but it's almost like kind of a warehouse walk, finishing up with a 21-year-old. So you get something like 5 drams right through the spectrum of casks, and then finish with a 21. And I think 4 of these 5 casks would be the inclusion casks going into that 21. So it's a nice kind of a breakdown of flavours.
Sounds fantastic. And obviously we're starting to pick up on hopefully we're starting to pick up in tours as and when we can get access to distilleries, so we can take people out as well. And maybe we just need to go a little bit further afield and get ourselves up to Elgin.
Yeah. Well, Speyside Festival's coming up. It's good that's going to head anyway, at least in maybe a smaller capacity, but at least that's in front of people again in the local area. So already getting some dates booked up for that.
And yeah, you've got to move quick. I'm almost hesitant to say what I'm going to say, but I never realised how quickly you've got to move. But it must have been 2 years ago when you were still able to go. I saw that Altmore was open for a weekend. I thought, oh, that sounds great. I'd like to go there, £10 a ticket. And I thought about it, and I contacted my mates and said, do you fancy going? Of course, they never got back to me for 3 or 4 days. And when they said, yeah, I thought, oh, cool, I'll go and get tickets. If you think about it, you've got to get tickets straight away, and then ask people if they want to join.
And that's a good thing about the festival. Things will open up that aren't normally open up, so you do get good access. Whether that's going to be the same case this year, I don't know, but generally it is good for that one-time chance to see. Even Longmorn, for example, did the same next to us. It's good then. So I'm looking forward to it, really am.
Fantastic. So, I guess we should possibly give a last word to Glen Glasser tonight. I mean, in terms of progression, where's it going to go? I mean, it's my absolute favourite distillery. Well,
just to see, you go back to Stewart. Go back to that day I was sitting with Stuart and Ronnie, look at that new make spirit, January 2009. So we are now in double figures. We've got aged spirit. But you got to remember, back then they were only making about 150,000 litres a year. Nothing. Even through our ownership, it was small production. And I've always said, when you work with small volumes, it's more difficult to keep the whiskey than it is to sell it. Because you've got to make sure you get that balance right. You want to get the distillery known. You want to get expressions out there and maybe watch its growth. But you've got to make sure you've got whiskey that's going to be there, that's going to be turning 10, 12, 15, 18, 20. And I think we've got the balance right there. I think we've got that balance right where we've not hugely driven Glenglasser out to the public, but we've let it be there, let it do its own wee thing, but more importantly, keep stuff in there for later. So that stuff in there for later will be out at some point. Rachel's looking at that warehouse stocks now. When that will be, I don't honestly know myself, but we did the 10-year-olds and 11-year-olds actually in the Coastal Cask series. So you can get some aged whiskey there. And once Rachel's happy that she's got that combination together and we can sustain it, which again, allocations are probably the worst thing for any company who have to put whiskey out in the market. It's frustrating for the consumers. It's frustrating for stores. You want to make sure you can keep that liquid flowing. That's the balance we're looking for. So just watch this space on that one. I don't even know what date it'll be, but we will do it at some point.
I guess it should be that way with Glenglassaugh because it is the kind of enigma of distilleries, I guess, at the end of the day. So there should always be a bit of mystery about what's going on, and yeah, absolutely. It's like, I suppose it's maybe like following Newcastle United football team. You're never gonna be sure what you're actually gonna get if you pop along. Anyway, listen, I'm not sure how to, because Mike left us with this. So, but what I will do is say thank you very much, Stuart, for joining us tonight. I think we need to do this. We absolutely need to do this again because you've got a lovely presentation with all those lovely photographs that we need to share with everybody. And I'm sure Mike will be really disappointed that he's missed out tonight as well. So he's going to want to do this. But we've always said we need a part two. We'll definitely get you back, and we can't wait to see you down in the shop. We've got the bar that's kind of there now as well for tasting. So we'll have some great nights down there. And yeah.
Well, maybe even before the weather closes in too much, I might take a wee East Coast drive in the midget and pop in by if I'm passing.
Oh, please do come down on Monday or a Wednesday, so I'm there.
Excellent.
And be good to see you. Brilliant.
Cheers. No, it's been great fun.
Thank you very much. I'm going to try and switch off. I'm not sure it'll work well because Mike normally does this, so hopefully we'll go off live. And we'll see you soon. Take care. Thank you very much, sir. Cheers now. Bye-bye.